For the first time this year, I was lucky enough to witness the beautiful snow-capped mountain ranges of Mount Kosciuszko. On my trip, I was surprised by the number of tourists driving in and out of Mount Kosciuszko National Park. The traffic on weekday evenings was blocked so far back into the national park that it was hard to make out where it ended. I began to wonder, haven't protected areas such as national parks been developed to conserve and preserve the environment? What was going on here? How are they managing all of this tourist activity? This is why I decided to explore whether tourism has affected biodiversity in Kosciuszko National Park. I completed my investigation by researching scholarly articles, government publications, and websites relating to the topic. The topic was particularly challenging to study for multiple reasons. Research that analysed biodiversity in Kosciuszko National Park was limited, there was very little recent research, and the existing research was very broad. As well as this, a potential bias in the literature existed, as most literature was associated with the same lead researcher. Lastly, most papers measured biodiversity using surveys of tourist sightings, which is a potentially inaccurate measurement method. The findings of my study related to three key questions. Question 1, how has tourism in Kosciuszko National Park impacted biodiversity? Question 2, how effective are current national park management methods in preserving biodiversity at Kosciuszko National Park? And question 3, in order to make tourism sustainable, what strategies need to be implemented to preserve biodiversity at Kosciuszko National Park? Research on tourism in the Alps, as well as reports from national park managers, indicate that tourism is negatively impacting wildlife and vegetation. One major issue is the trampling of vegetation caused by activities such as bushwalking. Bog communities in Kosciuszko National Park have shown little resistance and resilience to damage, taking a long time to recover once impacted by these activities. Furthermore, another impact of tourism is the introduction of exotic plant species. Multiple studies indicate that exotic plants are responsible for reduction of biodiversity of natural species, competing with them for light, space, and nutrients, and subsequently affecting the function of their respective ecosystems. In a study conducted by Bear and colleagues, it was found that 88 of 92 studied exotic plant species were found in areas of tourist activity, indicating that an association exists between exotic plant populations and tourist activity. Tourist activities are also theorized to be responsible for the introduction and spread of many weed species. The mountain pygmy possum is an endangered mammal native to Australian alpine areas such as Kosciuszko National Park. The population is currently at threat due to habitat loss. Weeds directly impact the mountain pygmy possum habitat by reducing the resources available to native species, thus reducing their population and subsequently biodiversity. Kosciuszko National Park managers use methods such as monitoring of soils and rocks, setting projects around the eradication of weeds, and the monitoring of alpine environments to preserve biodiversity. However, preserving biodiversity is challenging as Australia's protected areas are being prematurely exploited to tourist activities by the government for monetary gain. Further, there has been a recent reduction in government funding toward national park preservation, resulting in a decreased ability for managers to monitor visitors and their impacts to biodiversity. So what can we do to preserve biodiversity at Kosciuszko National Park? In order to preserve biodiversity from the effects of tourism, alternative management strategies need to be implemented. One possible strategy is the monitoring of visitor numbers, patterns, and impacts. Understanding these patterns will allow for the implementation of strategies to improve the preservation of biodiversity. As well as this, visitor management plans should also consider threatened plant species and should be used in developing effective planning and impact assessments of tourism on biodiversity. Furthermore, managers responsible for preserving biodiversity in protected areas need to be well informed and aware of recent research in order to put into place effective biodiversity management schemes. Lastly, economic consideration into tourism needs to be made. A study conducted by Walpole and colleagues found that tourism revenue does not significantly offset environmental management costs. Therefore, a review into the economy of tourism needs to be conducted and a subsequent policy change to ensure that biodiversity is maintained at Kosciuszko National Park. My project drew strong links with the Grade 4 and Grade 5 Australian Science curriculum. Firstly, my project explored the idea that living things depend on each other, as well as identified the effect that people can have on the environment. Lastly, my project required me to use methods of scientific investigation, including posing and researching hypotheses, then drawing informed conclusions.